Greatness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
Boop.
Recording in progress.
Of the next favorite episode of the Into Greatness Podcast with Jason and Jolene. I am Jason.
I am Jolene.
And we're here to talk about talk being cheap.
Yeah, what the fuck did you guys do last week after you got yourselves out of that rut?
Yeah, tell us.
You're here listening. We forgot to tell you that you have probably made us part of your Wednesday morning or weekly routine, and we thank you for that.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. Before I even go and spread it to the socials in the morning, people have listened. It's neat to go on and sort of see that people have listened before
I love that.
we actually officially launched it. Because this goes live about just after 1 in the morning.
I bet you that's Kevin. I bet you he listens
He's probably one
first.
of them, yeah. Because he's up early, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a morning guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
For listening to us.
For jump-starting your day with us. But yeah, we're this week we're kind of talking.
Talk's cheap.
Yes, how talk is cheap and there must be action taken. Because so often, I mean, Jolene and I were just before going on, we're talking about how we both at some point worked for government. And government loves to hold meetings. I remember where I worked, every Wednesday there had to be a staff meeting, even if there was nothing to address. You had to meet.
Yeah.
And so the bosses would have to come up with stuff to meet about. And so we'd spend 90 minutes, and I did the total. It was about $8,000 to $10,000 worth of like taxpayers' money paying us to sit and talk about shit for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And rarely, if ever, was anything resolved by the end of that 90-minute session. And rarely, if ever, was anything ever implemented afterwards that we talked about.
Right. I remember when I moved into private practice, I was like, oh my God, I have never worked so hard in my life. I work 100% of the time because I was in sessions with clients from 9 until, 4:30 or whatever. And I was 100% with them the entire time. In government, the amount of productive work they actually had out of me was maybe 2.5 hours a day.
Right? I know,
right?
it's
I was
ridiculous.
like, oh my God, I didn't work hard at all.
I did nothing.
Right? And we used to have a joke in meetings where like that was the thing. We had all of this like client work to do, but then we'd get sucked into these meetings that were eating up client time. And we were really, really conflicted all the time. So me and this one colleague used to sit there and go, cha-ching, cha-ching. Like, we're getting paid to sit here. Just
Right?
calm your tits.
Just making some money.
Getting
Making
paid.
money.
We would just do the little money symbol we'd make eye contact, do the money symbol and be like, that's okay. Just,
Yeah.
and then, or we'd play circus music. Because
Right.
that is what it was like, a bunch of circus monkeys. But yes, I get the time and place. There is need for communication, all of that stuff. But I mean, those kind of, the bigger you get, the more bullshit and bureaucracy there is to make sure everybody somehow is on the same page, treated the same way. Every, small ego on a pedestal gets to be heard and validated in some kind of weird way. It's so bizarre. I remember they actually wanted to every 4 years there's like a political change. So then everything structure changes and, it moves 90 degrees one way. They actually brought in change agents. So they hired people to talk to staff about change before they implemented the change.
Change
So you
agents?
had like someone come in and facilitate a meeting about how to be open to change. I was like, oh, fuck. Are we there? Like, are we just creating more jobs to create more change to create more jobs?
For sure, man. So many of those changes in government happen strictly to justify someone's position. Like, that's it.
Yeah. So this is where all talk, no action doesn't help us out. And I'm going to get you right now to think about all the places in your life where people don't do as they say they're going to do. And it just becomes talk, or all these future visions of things that you never see roll out. These are places that we get really frustrated. They're places we get resentful. They're places we question our own selves and wonder like, oh, what's wrong with us? Did I misperceive that? Am I not on the same page? Why do I not feel aligned? This really impacts our alignment. And this can come from unhealthy relationships where people are making broken promises. We make broken promises to ourselves, just like last week when we talked about, the unfulfilled gym membership that's sitting there. Like, how many promises do we break to ourselves, right?
Tons.
And when we're allowing that to happen with us, we're allowing other people to break promises to us as well, right? So like that discipline to choosing the things that are important to you is really important. And most of the time it's health related for us. It's exercise, it's nutrition, it's like mental focus on something or on a goal to achieve. This is why people love these like 90-day hard challenges or things like that, or like a marathon training, things like that. Like these are those tangible type things. For you, it's like discipline to write a book at a certain deadline, things like that, right? So think about all of those kinds of things, because the more places in your life you have all words, no action, the more you will normalize it, the more it feels familiar, and the less, in some aspects, the less disturbing it'll be to you. It just becomes the norm because you don't even know where to tackle it.
Well, yeah, and sort of piggybacking on that thought, talking about doing something makes most people feel like they're doing it.
I know.
But then there's not the satisfaction of actually accomplishing what you set out. I've got a friend of mine who is a great planner. He plans stuff. He plans to do this. He plans to do that. Always talking about the plan. Mm-hmm. And none of it ever comes to fruition. And if it does, it lasts 2 weeks and just fizzles out because suddenly it's like it's real, it's hard, it takes discipline, all the things that I don't think he has.
Right.
Because he spends his whole time talking about stuff.
That's also part of a phenomena. So going on a trip and planning a trip can both be equally satisfying. You actually get a dopamine rush from your brain perceiving it. There's this, like, you don't even have to be there, but the excitement of it, the anticipation of it. This is like all those situationships, the idea of what the relationship could be. Those ones are big. You actually feel fulfilled in them because you're thinking of what it could be instead of what it actually is.
Yes.
Until you become more self-aware and realize, I don't like this. And you keep pecking and pecking and pecking. I want more. I want more. And then it gets uncomfortable. But until you're there, it feels like a dopamine rush because it is.
Yeah.
So there's a benefit to planning a vacation and going through all the excitement and then living it out. So I wonder if he got enough of a fix that he didn't need to fulfill it anymore, or there was a letdown from it or something. That's interesting because it can have a positive and negative impact.
Oh, for sure. I think it happens enough that there's the negative is more prevalent than the positive.
Yeah,
right?
or it requires work to keep it up, right?
Yeah.
These are people with immediate gratification needs. They want the hit and then they're done with it.
Yeah.
They're not interested in sustaining it, right?
No.
And there's a lot of us, we work, and then, the weekend's here. Work. Oh, we finally have a vacation. Those are bad patterns to get into because they're not a realistic balance of how do we stop starving ourselves and needing to gorge? And that, from even just a food base, right?
Huge.
How do you just nourish yourself all the time so you never really feel like you need a vacation from life? It's a bonus. But a lot of people do it for the relief because they're so spent from whatever it is they're just stretching themselves thin on, right?
Big time.
But that's another thing that we talk about. Let's move it to the therapy realm, right? Because action creates change. Action is where it happens. You can have a blueprint for a house. You can draw that whole thing up. You can pick all of the details and the trim and the paint and whatever. But unless you fucking lay that foundation, put the boards in, get the nails, do the work, you got no house to live in. You got a piece of paper. You got a piece of paper and a big bill filled at the hardware store.
Yeah. And that's it.
That's it. And that's what I tell people about talk therapy. We can talk all you want, but until we're processing and we're actually working that through. So this is where Jason and I are big EMDR fans. Unless we're actually integrating that and we are resolving somatically where that is stored in our nervous system and allowing our thoughts to reframe and create new experiences moving forward, it's just a bunch of words. And this is why people loop. This is why, yes, you can do CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's like putting wallpaper over moldy drywall. Sometimes you've got to change the drywall out, right?
You have to.
Otherwise, it's eventually going to seep through sort of thing. So this is where, what is it that's happening in your life that you're working towards and you're not quite there yet? What do you say you're working towards, but you haven't actually taken the steps to it? There's a whole bunch of things in our lives that we need to put into categories almost because we can get really discouraged, right? Being in the day to day and forgetting to look up. I know I lose a lot of inspiration and desire when I don't know where I'm going. Mm-hmm. I have to anchor into something. I'm okay to leave space for the unknown, but I need a direction. I need some kind of time frame. Am I in this for 2 years? Am I in this for 10 years? I can tolerate distress and uncomfort for a bit, but how long, right? These are the people that are I'm sticking with this job until, for me, it was until I get my master's and something in my life reorganizes, then I'll make the swap. For now, this is where I am and I'm good with that, right? I know people who have stuck things out. I just need to get through my last mat leave and then I will move or whatever that be, right?
Schwarzenegger always talks about his 5-year plan.
Yeah.
He always had a 5-year plan.
Oh, I like that.
Right? Because not so
Yeah.
far that it was like, shit, that's too far away.
Right.
But it was enough time to actually implement, because you can't be, I'm going to do all this in a year. Well, that's maybe a bit unrealistic.
Right.
5 years you can pull off.
Yeah, and I always do the yearly thing. This is why we're at this time of year, because we're almost at that point. Find your, statement of the year. Find the core desired state to sink into. What does that year look like? Just a couple weeks ago, I went back in my day timer, looked at all of the core things I wanted to hit and started writing things down. Yep, did this. Nope, circle that. I still got 6 weeks to do that, Where did I lose sight here? Oh, but here, look at this thing showed up in my life over here. That's kind of cool. I focused on that instead. So give yourself some reference points, accountability, see where the actions actually flowed through. Because, I make specific things. I have themes, I have kind of values, I have guidance, and then I have, these are the things, right?
Yeah.
I want to do this 3 times a week. I want to do this. I want to go here. I want to, right? And I put fucking check marks by that stuff all year long.
Same.
Right?
Same. I got my day planner, and every day I put down the things I need to do that day that sort of lead to completing the big
Totally.
project or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it works. And there's a as we talk about that dopamine hit, there's a satisfaction putting that little like, check, did that
Yep.
today.
And I go back and I review how I feel when I don't hit certain things, right? So I wanted to pay attention to my nutrition this year, and I waited until I think September to actually re-engage with my nutrition coach and stuff and get on a much stricter routine to lose weight, because I was just not feeling happy hormonally. There's stuff going on and just different, I think everything is different. We're in different stages now, right? But I also know I wasn't disciplined enough with some of that stuff in a good way for me. I wasn't feeling good, right? So I waited till September to do that. So when I checked that off in my book, I was a little disappointed in myself for not doing it sooner. But then I also recognized I didn't do it sooner because I didn't fucking do it sooner. It wasn't important enough. I wasn't uncomfortable enough. I understand change enough, but I'm glad I did it and I've stuck with it. And I'm out of town every friggin' weekend, but I pack my meals and I only eat at a restaurant once during that day. And I choose certain things because it's hard. It's hard to be in routine all week and then out of routine on the weekend. So I've really disciplined myself in that realm. And then I will look at something. So I have a book goal, right? I want to read a book a month kind of thing. Well, I fell short on that, but then there were some months I listened to a book 3 times, 3 in that month. So I was I gave myself some grace there. But I observed what my response was going through the list and where I was disappointed, where I was surprised, and where I was oh, you know what? And I always write it in a different color. So I write the check marks in a different color so I can visually see how much has been accomplished.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's for me, the visual is huge. It's got to be tangible. I've got to feel it, touch it, see it, right? Otherwise, it's just a bunch of experiences that go in the past and you forget oh my God, this, and this, right? Kevin's been really amazing about looking at my bucket list and helping me knock things off, and his as well. And every time we check something off, that is so rewarding, right? And I'm holy shit, this bucket list was for the rest of my life. In a weird way, I was thinking about it that way. And I'm we've checked so much off in a short period of time. I'm going to need to start thinking bigger here.
Something that takes more time.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
But yeah, yeah, so it kind of puts some of that stuff into perspective, and it allows us to dream a little bigger, to expect a little more from ourselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I even noticed that through my Pilates, my back and forth. So sometimes, I was able to hit certain level classes really well and was pushing myself, and other times I had to just be no, you know what? I'm doing some lower level classes because I feel that 2 weeks I took off here and there for my kids really set me back a bit. Just go back and restart in a couple foundational classes again and then get back into it, right?
I know Sifu always said that if you miss 3 classes, you're basically starting over.
Yeah, honestly.
And
I would feel that.
In any activity, yeah.
Yeah, I would feel that. So, I don't expect myself. I really learned that is oh yeah, just go back, start at the basics to feel successful. That's what we want with action. We need to set ourselves up for success. So you can't go and start doing what you were doing 2 years ago.
No.
But do you know how many people do?
Well, they try and they think they can jump right back in, and then they're why is this really hard? Why? And then they get pissed off and then they quit.
Yeah.
Again.
We do so many things to the extreme, right? No, we need to take our time with our action. But then some action does require quick action, right?
And you'll kind of figure that out as you go along.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the big thing is it's important to know that there has to be action following talk. Like
There
has
does.
to
We
be.
have to see the results of something, you know. And I would say most of the socialization around that has been disappointment. When we don't see action, we just see words, we devalue it. It's like, sorry, right? Don't tell me sorry. Don't say I love you. Show me.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of really shitty connections where people are told that they are loved and none of the action meets that. So I would say our socialized relationships really have set the landscape for what action and no action looks like.
Big time. And I think living in a world where you can feel, especially with social media, well, I don't want to get political, but say the recent election in the United States
Yeah.
didn't go the way most people figured that it would. Well, if you had paid attention, you would have seen that coming.
Yeah.
But they think going up and making a comment on social media is doing something about it or changing the tide. It does nothing.
Yeah.
It's just, social media is the ultimate example of talk is cheap.
Yeah.
And it just gets lost. I don't know about you, Joe, but like in the last couple of weeks, I just glance over anything that I can see related to that. I glance over 99.9% of what I see on there anyways. I'm not even engaging with it because it's just blah, 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 blah. That's all it is.
Yeah. I didn't even know it was election day until election day. So that shows you how much attention I was paying.
Right.
It wasn't within my control. It wasn't worth stressing myself out. It's not that I was not caring about it, but I really needed to not care about it.
Yeah. Well, we could do a whole episode on doom scrolling and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff, right? Which we
for
will
sure.
touch on. But that's a big example of talk, but people thinking that they are engaged and taking action by commenting, but it's a pointless exercise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, like what areas of our life do we feel like we could take better action, right? And what areas of life are we taking too much action? Or, you know, like there is a time for talk and there's a time for action, right?
Yeah.
And I would encourage, and this shows up in my office a lot. People will say, I'm bringing up the same thing. And I know for myself, this happens too. Bringing up the same thing over and over again. Well, it's because nothing's changing. That's really nothing's changing. So there's two things that need to change. One, it's your participation in it. And if it's not changing, you need to change it, which means you need to either get the fuck out, change what you're doing, or recognize it's not changing and you got to change your goalpost on that.
Yeah.
Right? Like really.
Hugely.
Those are
yeah.
the basics, right? And then the other thing is, you know, how important is it and how confident are you? That's a big one when we look at, I know I've talked about this before in substance use and things like that, but I will ask people, they'll be all talk. I'm not really seeing much. And I'm like, okay, how important is this to you? 0 to 10. Oh, it's a 10, you know, like it's a 9 or a 10. How confident are you? Like a 2. Lots of times people have a ton of confidence, but it's not that important to them.
Yeah.
It's not that important. And I think there are times where when there is a lack of action, you can fill in the blanks with the words, you know, and I have a lot of like shitty conversations with clients around that. And I can think about times in my life where there is a lot of conversation and it is there perpetually in a cycle because the action essentially is not rolling out, right? And it's neat to see people come out of that spiral themselves. You know, I just had someone in my office yesterday and she was like, I have asked for this over and over and over again. And she's like, now I've just come to a place of apathy and I've realized that I am slowly leaving before I'm gone.
Yeah.
Because I'm just tired of talking about this. And, you know, and I actually had to say, you know, this was like a male-female situation, but I said, you know, based on this lack of action and lack of addressing it with you, I want you to know that like he knows every day you are disappointed. So he wakes up every day knowing you're disappointed, and his inaction to help address that is telling you that it's not important to him. And he may not intentionally be doing that, but that is the mathematical equation of that behavior. And she was like, yeah, because she kept telling herself, well, maybe he doesn't know. And I said, but how many times have you very clearly communicated that?
Yeah.
She goes, like, daily.
Then it's
And
not
I said,
important.
yeah, then he wakes up well aware of that and is actively choosing not to address it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. That's a
changes it.
Changes it completely.
Yeah, because most of the time we will protect ourselves from the lack of action by making an excuse for someone else's behavior.
Yeah, well, for sure. For sure we do. We're really good at that, actually, especially if we have this ideal vision in our heads of what we want that to look like for us, right?
We get stuck on the idea of what could be instead of what is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I lived like that for a long time, the idea of what could be, and that's what actually leaves you in really shitty situations for a long time.
Long time.
So I have made, I believe I've done a really good job of being more honest with myself about that. And even when I have the most wonderful ideals about something, I'm also like, I think I've forced myself to have way more of a realist approach than I've ever had before. And I really admit that shit to myself, because once I take my own rose-colored glasses off, I'm able to make much better decisions.
Big time.
Big time. I mean, we all are, right? So I know that's something I have learned and grown into, which sucks, because most of the time it's making shitty decisions, right?
Being pragmatic is hard.
Oh, for sure. Even just looking at my previous job and going on my own, there was decisions like that take place, right? But yeah, we get, and I think that there is this idea, I talked about somebody, about hope.
Yeah.
Right? And this one person this last week was like, I realized in that situation I had lost hope. And when I lost hope, I lost me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I love that, because we can all think of this time where we get really discouraged at certain points in our life, especially career-driven things, relational things, people around us, like maybe as a parent with your child or something. When you lose hope, or even the election, right? Mm-hmm. When you lose hope, you lose your ability to see around maybe some of the rubbish that we're in. And I think that also is this delicate balance of how much are we rose-colored glassing and how much are we being hopeful and able to problem solve around the rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to that whole realm of control thing too. I think you can control, the only thing you can really control in life is how you react to it, right? And so you can choose cynicism, or you can choose hope or optimism, however you want to word it. But if you can start basing your decisions and actions around that, I think it takes a lot of talk out of the equation, because people will talk about how you can fix all the problems of the world, but you can't fix any of them, really. But you can fix how you perceve it. And how you behave in the world, to then create that ripple effect, right? Yeah. Yeah. And even one little ripple. That's right? one of the big ones is, how do you change either, your perception of that situation, what you accept as, action or inaction. Like, you are the only variable you can control. Mm-hmm. The rest, if they're not showing up, you can't. There's nothing you can do. And we spend a lot of our time controlling all those other people. These are the overfunctioning. These are the codependent relationships, all of that stuff. But most of the time, and that's what I get to see in my office eventually, is all those people have healed those things. It comes back to them. And honestly, walking away or reshifting or facing a different direction tends to be what that lack of action outcome is. It's them who needed to take action, not the people around them. Yep. The people around them were not taking the action. Right? No, and they weren't, or they just wanted things to stay the same. Yeah. Or they want, for whatever reason, there's a whole bunch of variables. Well, think about you at the paper, right? Yeah, I stuck with that way longer than I should have. Yeah. Way longer than I should have. But you also, that's the other thing, is you thought about your family. You thought about different things that needed to take place. Thought about timing. Timing's such a big one. Huge. Right? Actually, it closed right when I was applying for the fire information job that year, right? So that was the end anyways. And that's the other thing. When we look at things that influence us, sometimes we are not given a choice. Yeah. Sometimes that door is closed so fast on us that you don't get a choice. And I actually have somebody who recently has gone through that. They've been pondering some things, but their job is comfortable. Mm-hmm. It's not totally fulfilling, but it's good enough. And it's familiar. And then all of a sudden, boom, job's getting restructured and you need to move on. Yeah. And it's like, whew, you didn't get a chance to choose. You were taking your time and they were like, move on. Game over, man. And I said, and there was quite a few things that didn't line up after that. And I was like, you are getting the most clear message that you are meant to face a different direction. Yeah. And when you embrace that, I want you to notice what starts working out for you. Big time. Just practice this, right? Yep. That's your flow and go, right? Big time. Big time. There you go. Whole bunch of talk. None of it was cheap this time, was it?
Right? Yeah. You guys taking action by just press and play, right?
Yeah. It's funny how like things that seem like the simplest and that I'm not doing anything can actually also lead to something.
Right.
You just got to put yourself out there just that little bit.
Totally.
Stop thinking about it. Stop talking about it. Just do it.
Just do it, Nike.
Nike had the right idea.
They did.
Assholes. I wanted that slogan. Anyways, that wraps up this favorite episode of the Into Greatness podcast with Jason and Jolene. We're back next week with your next favorite one. And I can't talk. Until then, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jolene.
Just do it.